Hey, Commissioners and everyone in the room, welcome back from our break. I would like to do another reminder if you have just gotten here, if you will check your mobile devices and please make sure that they are on vibrate or silent. That would be greatly appreciated. Commissioners, as we get ready to go into the next item, I would like to take a point of personal privilege, if you will. I have a couple things I would like to get. I have a couple questions that I would like some clarification on that was commented on earlier, and then I have a couple comments that I'd like to make prior to Jason's presentation, if that's okay with y'all, please. Jason, can you just clarify, because I wasn't certain, but this was said earlier, you did make a contact with Kannapolis City Schools prior to the meeting, offering them to provide cash funding for their middle school, which was what was said earlier. Is that correct?
No, I called them and I said, if we could do this type of plan, would you be willing to withdraw your resolution for the bond?
Okay. I wanted to make sure that I understood completely what was said.
Sure, no problem. I'm just talking with them about an idea. I did not make any offers to them. I did not do anything of the sort.
Okay. And you did not tell them that there were 3 votes for your plan?
I have never said that there are 3 votes for my plan.
So I just want to make sure.
Sure, I understand.
And but you did contact them prior to yesterday when you emailed your proposal to the rest of the board. Would that be true? I don't know when you contacted them.
I contacted Dr. Kane on Monday. Well, the first time I contacted them, honestly, Chairman Poole, was I contacted them to ask them what the cost of their middle school was. So we were having a conversation about the cost of their middle school. And I spoke with Dr. Kane on Monday night, and I said, is this something that you would be willing to consider? And I didn't even realize that they were having a board meeting that night, to be honest with you. I was just trying to have an informal conversation with them. And so the fact that it got brought up in their board meeting even surprised me, because I was just trying to have an informal conversation with them. But it was just something to the effect of, is this something that you would be willing to consider?
Okay, the reason that I'm asking the question is that what was presented to me was that there was an impression that there were 3 votes, and that's what was presented to me. So that's why I'm asking for clarification, because I don't want that to be, I don't want to have misinformation.
I spoke with the chairman of their board this afternoon, and he said to me emphatically that he was not aware of 3 votes that would vote for it. So whoever told you that was not the chairman of the board.
And actually, in fact, it was.
Okay, well, that's what he told me, and I'll tell you specifically, I don't believe that he ever talked to Commissioner Burridge. And when we spoke today, I said, listen, I've got no idea where Commissioner Byrd stands on this, and he said, I have no idea where Commissioner Byrd stands on it either. I have not spoken with him. So at no time was it ever communicated to him that there were 3 votes for this plan. I don't know right now that there are 3 votes for the plan, so I would not ever say that. I try to only make factually true statements, and I don't know as a matter of fact, so I never, ever said that to him.
And that's perfectly fine. That's what I wanted to make sure of. I just know.
Well, he's sitting here. We should just ask him. Todd, did I ever tell you that we have 3 votes for this plan?
You did not directly say that. I may have implied that from the conversation, but I don't know that if I said that to Liz, that you said you had them. I don't think I said it hard like that.
Yeah. Because when you and I spoke today, you said you hadn't talked to Commissioner Burridge, and we
talked to Commissioner Burridge until I talked to Commissioner Burridge at 4 o'clock today. 3:45. Yeah, it was 3:45 today when I talked to Commissioner Burridge. And Commissioner Burridge has not told me how he would vote. Commissioner Meesmer has not told me how he would vote. Commissioner Morris has, and Liz, I think you have. If you didn't say it directly, I think I would understand. But I understood where you stood.
I'm not sure all this is completely appropriate.
Yeah,
I don't know where we're going with this.
Do it.
I think it's, no, I'm
Because you
trying
did this
to
to
make
me
sure I
last time when we
understand.
went to the personnel session, and I don't want this to be happening every single time.
And I understand that.
You
So
have
give me
talked
a
to
moment,
several board
please.
members about things. When you became chairman, you talked to several people before those meetings, and do not come to me and accuse me of something that is not true.
I'm not accusing you of anything. What I'm saying is that in my conversation that I had with the chairman last night, there was an indication that there were 3 votes to go forward with the plan. He asked my opinion, which I gave him. I'm trying to make sure that I understand what's going on.
And if
okay?
that was the case,
And
then what does that have any relevance for this?
We just finished a 15-minute.
If you'll let me finish, I would appreciate it. Okay? Thank you.
We just finished a 15-minute recess. Why didn't you just ask me about it then? Why do you have to ask me about it?
Can I finish, please?
Yep.
Thank you. When we have had meetings of this Board of Commissioners, I can tell you that prior to these meetings, and not speaking for anyone else, it's been very stressful because I have no idea where conversations are going, what will be proposed, which is perfectly fine. The idea is that you are getting ready to make a proposal. It is your proposal. Most things that have been here and been discussed have been used with the term I. This is a collective body, which is a we. We have to work together as a group. One person can't do it all. The last meeting and with this meeting, you requested that the published agenda be changed after it had been published. This agenda was not changed. We added we added your comments, which I think are perfectly fine. My concern with putting that first was that I didn't know who was going to be here, and I wanted to make sure that what you do present tonight, everyone that wants to hear it can hear it. There are times in these meetings when I have been concerned that the atmosphere has been one of animosity. Our guests have not always been treated very well. It limits dialogue. It puts us in a very defensive mood. Again, prior to coming today, prior to coming to many of our meetings, I get stressed. Y'all might be perfectly fine with it. I'm just telling you how I feel. My reasons for talking about this today is that there are 5 commissioners. We, as a group, have to work together. Staff has to have time to do their job of providing viable options for all 5 of the commissioners. As you have said before, to quote you, Jason, you've said, I have a plan. You have asked Commissioner Morris and myself, what is your plan? I don't know that you've asked Chris or Larry, and if he has, then same for y'all too. I have said repeatedly that I would like to wait for staff to be able to properly research items and properly provide the information to all 5 of us in our public meetings. Right now, staff is spending a lot of time reacting to individual requests. We have a process in place for a budget. We will have budget conversations in May. We have a process in place for the bond, which our council has laid out for us. I am concerned that in some of the presentations so far, we've only been getting the good side of the plan, which is no debt. And I will agree that no debt is a good thing. None of us want any more debt than we can have, whether that's a personal basis or as a county basis. I am concerned that projects will be underfunded. I am concerned that we, as a collective body, cannot tie the hands of future boards and make promises that we can't keep or that they can't keep. I am concerned that according to the separation of powers or duties that fall between the elected boards, that Rowan Cabarrus Community College, Cabarrus County Schools, and Kannapolis City Schools has the authority to design their schools and to design the programming of their schools. That falls under their control. Our responsibility is to fund the needs as they outline them to us. I am concerned that there will be multi-million-dollar cuts to the county budgets for this next fiscal year and the one after that, which equates to cuts in services. These have not been fully identified, and I am looking forward to more details coming so that I can properly understand any proposals. I'm concerned that there is a lack of cash flow to implement plans that have been presented so far, and I'm certain that there are other concerns that will come up as we go through this process. I want to address a little bit the breakout of the bond versus the cash. I believe I was still on the school board at the time. I may not have been. It may have been in that transition period, but I believe I was there. And there was a realization that mops and buckets and other short-term items, or if you look at useful life of a product, were being financed with long-term financing.
Madam Chairman, I don't see
So-
this on the agenda.
But I understand. I asked for a personal point of,
Well, it's interesting that
So,
when.
I'm almost finished.
Okay.
Furniture, technology, supplies, and some equipment of that nature should be paid for with cash. This is something that finance between the different entities have talked about in the past. So though this may have been a new presentation today, it is not something that was just kind of pulled out of the air. I did make a comment, which Commissioner Burridge will substantiate, that mops and buckets did not need to be financed with long-term money. So that may have been the reason why this was presented to us today, and if that is the case, I will take the blame for a new spreadsheet being given to us. We have a couple choices before us. We can follow the agenda and we can have meaningful, respectful conversations. You are all welcome to attack me and tell me why everything that I have said today is incorrect, and you can blame me for everything that you want to, or my few comments can be completely ignored. As I see it, though, we have common goals, and we need to function as a group with common goals. We want to address the needs of the 3 school systems. I think all 5 of us will say that. We want to be fiscally responsible. I think all 5 of us will say that. We want to be honest about how the actions of this board will impact the citizens of Cabarrus County, both in terms of the taxes they pay and the services that they receive. I think all 5 of us will agree with that, and I'm sure there's something else. I want to apologize if I have rambled on too long in your estimation. I have been told, I'll use the word told, not asked, because that's how I received it, that I should limit the commissioners to 10 minutes on any agenda topic. I've not done that, and I don't think that that should be done. I think that if any of us have to speak, we should have to speak. I apologize for going over. If I haven't timed myself. The challenge for us today is all 3 systems have physical bricks and mortar needs, and we have to find a way to address those needs with funding these projects. We can't meet every need as far as I'm concerned immediately, so we do need a plan. We do have before us another plan that you would like to present on short-term financing. I received it yesterday in an email. I have glanced at it. I will be honest with you, I am not an expert on it, and I probably cannot debate a whole lot of the items on it or add too much meaningful conversation tonight. But I'm glad that it's added and that you are having an opportunity to present a proposal to us. And those are the comments that I would like to make, and I would like to turn it over to you, Jason, if you're ready.
May I be excused?
Well, I just think that your comments were totally inappropriate, to be honest with you. I think that if you had those comments, those are personal comments. If you don't like the way that I represent the people of Cabarrus County, you should have come to me and said, I don't like the way that you represent the people of Cabarrus County. But each of us feels an obligation to represent the people in a specific way. And quite frankly, I don't think that you represented them in a substantive way that benefits them. And I suspect that most of what you just said is because for the time that I have been on this board, I have implemented a measure of accountability that you have not seen before. Now, it's very easy for our staff and this board to operate in a very unified way when you have an unlimited pot of money. I know that you have children. If you go to the mall and I gave you $1,000 and told them each go buy something that you really want to, well, they'll really easy find something for $1,000 and everybody will walk out of there happy. If you give them $15 and tell them to go buy themselves something that they really want to, well, I think you're going to have a little different level of happiness. And I think that this county has operated for several years based on the fact that they have an unlimited credit card, and that has driven the happiness with which you speak. And when I got appointed to the board, things changed. And myself and Chris and Larry began to hold the school board accountable for some of the expenditures they've done, staff accountable, and previous boards accountable. And I suspect that a lot of the personal animosity that you have towards me comes from the fact that we have implemented accountability, which has brought solutions for the taxpayers. So I would have appreciated if you would have told me that in private. I think that it's interesting that you complain that that 2 times I have asked for an amendment to the agenda, and both times I've done that prior to the meeting. Yesterday I asked for it the day before, and the last time that I asked for it in response to an amendment that was made that morning. I got the agenda, I called Mike by the afternoon and asked for it prior to the meeting. So what you just did was a presentation, and you never asked for an amendment to the agenda. You did not put it on there. So there is a strong hypocrisy, I think, to the statements that you made about me. Moreover, you have complained that I have conversations with people about different ideas, whether it be commissioners or whether it be other board chairmen. I suppose without you being present, I think that it's very ironic that when you became chairman, you and I had a long talk. I know that you and Commissioner Burge had a long talk, and by your definition that you talked to me about the other day, that would be 3. So was that a quorum? Had you called a meeting to determine that you would be chairperson of this board? The answer to that is no. So you're putting standards on people that are not real standards, and then you're standing up and asking us to be held accountable to those standards when you won't be held accountable to them yourself. I think this was totally inappropriate. I have tried to be nice in my response to you and be factual and not be personal, but I do believe that this was totally inappropriate.
Something. You know, this is an elected body. 5 people sit on it. And for us to sit here and try to destroy each other makes no sense to me. Now, Jason has a plan. Will it work? I don't know till it goes through staff. I'm not voting on nothing till staff says it'll work. I'm not voting on bonds till staff says they'll work. I'm sitting here as an individual, and I'm going to vote what I think's best for the citizens of Cabarrus County. I don't care how nobody else votes. That's up to each individual sitting here. And for us to sit here and try to tear each other down is only hurting this board. It's hurting the citizens of Cabarrus County. It's wasting the time of all these people sitting in here. And I don't have any I don't have any problem with the comments that's just been made by either one of you. But you know, we need to put all this stuff aside. And it hasn't been too pleasant to be on this board lately. I'll be honest with you. I've thought about resigning a couple of times. But if we can't learn to work together, then we might as well all resign and let somebody else do the job.
Would you like to present the next item?
Absolutely. I did email you out the sheet. It's not really a major change, to be honest with you, because what I have been talking about from the operational side of the county was exactly the same. I need my microphone. I'll say that again. This plan is not a change from the operational side of what we've presented in the past. The only change is the timing of these funds within the Cash for Schools program. So as I've talked about before, this Cash for Schools program comes up with $208 million over the next 10 years to fund all of our facilities needs so that we did not have to go and put those needs onto a bond. What I heard from Commissioner Morris and from other county officials in different boards was that the timing of those funds did not work well for the schools. So I went back and I worked with Pam on finding a way to speed up those funds, deliver them slightly earlier, but then pay them back out of the Cash for Schools plan. So basically what I did is I funded, this plan provides additional funds for Mount Pleasant Middle School next year. It provides funds for the RCCC Cosmetology School next year. And then what we would do is a short-term bond for Kannapolis Middle School. And on here I have $22 million. That was because Will Crabtree and I were still working on the number, and he said that would be a fine plug number. So if we borrow $22 million in 2015 and pay that back by 2020, a 5-year repayment, we will end up paying back $22.8 million. If we borrow $22 million under the bond and pay that back at 4.75% interest over 20 years, we will pay back $34.3 million. So on this one project alone, we can save, pardon me, I've got my sheet here, but On this one project alone, we can save $11.5 million. The second project that we would do this type of financing for is Royal Oaks Elementary. Now, as I had talked to Chairman Kiger about, I think that building it for 700 students is probably too many. And if you look at the example set by the 3 elementary schools in Mecklenburg County, $11 million is an appropriate amount, I believe, for a 550-person school. So we borrowed $11 million in 2016, and then another $8 million for RCCC, and that would be in addition to $2 million that we would provide to them in cash. $10 million is the number that we had in our budget in terms of what we would fund for them, so that was the number that I used. So we would borrow $19 million in 2016. We would pay that back over 4 years, so that by 2020, all of this financing would be paid back. The total payback on that $19 million would be $19,600,000. It would cost us $600,000 in interest. The total payback under a bond, again at 20 years at 4.75%, would be $29.6 million. So borrowing it in this fashion would literally save us $10 million on this project. So on these 3 projects, we could save $21.5 million in interest financing by doing it this way as opposed to borrowing it on a bond. So through this plan, within the first 2 years, we would have funded the major priorities of all 3 of our education systems, including the new Cabarrus County Elementary School, Mount Pleasant Middle School, Royal Oaks Replacement School, Kannapolis City Middle School, the RCCC Cosmetology School, and the RCCC Advanced Technology Center. All of those things would be done within the first 2 years of this program. So in addition to having all of those projects funded, through 2020, we would have an additional $22 million to fund lower cost priority items. So they have land, for instance, RCC, or the gymnasium for Kannapolis City Schools, and we would collectively as a group decide how we were going to fund those projects within that $22 million. That is the first through 2020 of this plan. At 2020, we would pay off all of the financing of this, and we would have from 2020 through the last 2025, we would have $97.5 million for building facilities or maintenance. That would be $97.5 million in addition to the money that I've talked about before. One of the major benefits of this plan is that by 2020, under this plan, our debt would be reduced from $469 million to $196 million. This plan would allow us to cut our debt by 58.2% by 2020, and we would still build all of these facilities. Another benefit of this plan is that no tax increase is required to fund this plan. The other 3 plans all required a tax increase in 2017 under your definition of a tax increase, Chairman Poole, and do not provide funds for maintenance until year 2017 at best. And you had talked about what are the costs of doing this. In my presentation in December, Chairman Poole, I went through and had 3 slides about the costs, and I've given Pam Dubois this spreadsheet. I gave this to her in January, which lists specific things from which we will make expense reductions. So I don't think that I've presented it as only the benefits. But I will say it this way for the people at home. Our budget in 2013 was $211 million. Our budget this year was $226 million. So our budget went up $15 million in 1 year. If we roll back $7 million of that increase, we can fund this entire program and realize these tremendous savings. I know I read in the newspaper also that Commissioner Morris has said that I didn't provide any funds. Listen, these are the 3 slides from my presentation in December and the spreadsheet that Pam has. Here they are. You have them. You had them in December. You have them again. If anybody else would like to see them, you're welcome to them. And I suppose I would say one other thing. I'm sorry if presentations like this, where I am trying desperately to save the county money, offend you. That is not my goal. My goal is to come in here and try to provide real solutions. As I approached this board, the only thing being offered was a $100 million bond, and I knew that the county, being almost $500 million in debt, that would not be beneficial to the county. So over the past 6 months, I've come up with a plan and revised it to meet people's comments 3 times, and nobody else has a plan. And I'm sorry if my having an alternative plan offends you.
I never said that a plan offended me. Thank you. Do you have any other comments? Commissioner Burridge, do you have any comments?
I don't have any.
Steve?
Yes. Thank you for giving me this information. And I have seen these slides, and I did see them in December, and I have looked at them since that time. Now, there is one additional piece of information that you gave me that I have not seen, and I am very much in favor of saving money any way we can. I am very much in favor of meeting the needs of the schools as much as we can. As you know, I don't think that we'll be able to do everything that's on this list, but I think we need to look at it carefully and do as much as we can within our means to pay the money back. The plan that Commissioner Osterreich has just presented, I do not have confidence in, because there are too many pieces of it that I don't understand or that have not been explained. And by that, I mean, this is just a little bit of some of the things we've talked about. On October the 10th, 2013, at our fall retreat, you presented a plan that called for a $25 million cut to our operating budget. And that's clear to see on the part 2 of the video for that night at 18 minutes. Later in the same meeting, you snapped your fingers twice and said you could cut $15 million just like that, and repeated it the second time just like that. Then on December the 2nd, you presented another plan that called for cutting the budget by $13.3 million. And at that time, you said you had $4 to $5 million still to identify. And I think it was at that presentation that perhaps these slides that you just handed me came from, where the 2 concrete cuts that I was able to walk away with were county employees paying a portion of their health care expense, and then you also talked about cutting travel expenses. Subsequently, I've had some conversations with various staff and asked questions about their travel and what the purpose of that is. They've explained to me the various certifications that are required in different departments in the county. My question, and that's what most of their travel is, to get these certifications. My question was, what happens if you don't get those certifications? They said, well, in most instances, we would have to hire an outside person to come in to perform that role for us at that time. I said, well, do you think we would save money by doing that? And their answer was, not being sure, they expect that it might be a little bit more expensive. Those were the 2 specific things. When I have questioned you about these significant budget cuts, at one time you said you had a list, but I probably would not be able to understand it. I'm assuming that's the list you handed me tonight, so I'm going to try my best to see if I can figure out how to understand it. You later said that I had not been able to say no to special interest groups like senior citizens and libraries, and it could not continue. I'm sorry, but I do not consider senior citizens or library patrons as special interest groups. I've heard others question you about proposed budget cuts, and your response has been, we will discuss that during our budget workshops in May. And these are some of the reasons that I do not have enough information to support pulling a bond referendum and looking at this alternative plan for financing, because I don't know where the cash is coming from to make the payments. I mean, it's coming out of one of these levels of cuts that you have suggested, but for me to be supportive of that, I would need to know what impact that was going to make on our citizens and the services that we deliver. Because that's what I was elected to do, is to take care of the needs of the citizens of Cabarrus County. So I do not have enough information to understand the impact that this will make to services that we provide. Furthermore, to do this under this plan will deprive our citizens of having a say as whether or not they support construction of these schools or not, as they will not be able to vote for or against the bonds. So for those reasons, I would not be able to support this alternative plan. Thank you.
Are there any other comments on this particular issue?
I thought we didn't have a choice in putting this bond referendum on the November election.
Commissioner, are you asking that question to me?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay.
I think that was the opinion of our bond counsel when he met with us the last time.
So regardless of what we do here, that bond referendum still has to go on the November election.
In some amount, unless the applications or requests
Withdrawn.
have been withdrawn.
Right.
What is the amount listed there on your sheet there? What's the amount at the bottom of that page?
$5,351,961.
Sure. And the next page, it talks about $4 million identified, doesn't it? That's the salary page. Your next slide.
These are the 3 pages you gave me plus this list, which is this first time I've seen this list.
The second slide there in your hand, the second page that you have, down at the bottom it says $4 million, right?
What does it say for me?
4.15 million?
Right, in the center of the page.
Sure. And then the last page talks about $1 million in savings from the healthcare plan, because I have said that I think that it would be okay
Right.
for employees to pay 10% of their healthcare.
Right,
And I would be willing to take the same exact pay cut that I ask of our employees.
correct.
I'm just curious, how much do you pay for your employees in healthcare?
I have part-time employees that are not covered under a health care program.
So 0?
Most of them are minors. That is correct.
So with the county, employees paying 10% is far too much and totally unthinkable, but with your own employees, when it comes to your money, then they pay 100%.
I do not consider the level of professional employees that we have in the county the same as part-time high school students working a part-time job.
Is that
No,
all
I
of
do
your
not.
employees? All of your employees
That
are
is
high
correct,
school?
for the most part.
For the most part, right. But what about the ones
They're
that are
all
not?
part-time.
Yeah. Do
None
you know
of
how
them-
much the county pays per employee for health insurance?
I have seen that information. I don't have it in front of me right now.
It's about $8,000.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much the state of North Carolina pays for each employee for health insurance?
No.
About $5,100.
Mm-hmm.
So there are cost savings available to us in that area. And I'm just saying, let's look and find them. So I have spent the time to look through these things. And as I mentioned to you, Pam has had that list. She showed it to the meeting the last time that we talked. If you would like a copy of the list, I'd have been happy to give it to you, or she could have given it to you. County staff had that. I haven't been hiding the ball. But even what you mentioned, my plan originally was $13.3 million in December. But to do this part, to save the county tens of millions of dollars on the bond financing, we need to come up with $7 million. And as you mentioned, I've already identified about $9.5 million between those specific things that are on that list So just in those things on that list, we could fund this plan and go forward and do this short-term financing and fund the rest of the schools in cash. So I have specifically identified to you enough expenditure reductions in order to fund this entire plan.
I think that when you and I had a conversation about this at one of our previous meetings, and I think we may have specifically talked about some of the items on one of these lists, these are dollars that are already in our budget, every one of them. If we change the amounts on those, you know, and I think the question that I asked at that time was, if we have $500 in our fuel budget and we only spend $250 on fuel, there's $250 left over. And what happens to that $250? That is where the funds came from that we've just discussed, funding an elementary school and a portion of a middle school in Mount Pleasant. These are not, you know, if we have savings in these areas, those are not new dollars. Those are dollars that are already there, that we're already using to fulfill the needs of the schools.
And thank you. I appreciate this dialogue. Let me tell you how they are not being efficiently used. In your instance, if you have $500 that's budgeted to fuel and you only use $250, you've committed that $500 for the year. So you cannot use the additional $250 that you don't need for something. So if something comes up and you have a need of $250, you've already allocated it to the fuel, so you can't use it. So if you had no other money in that scenario, you would have to go borrow the $250. So my plan, this plan for cash, says let's appropriately budget $250, and then with the money that's freed up, let's allocate that to the schools so that we don't have to go borrow the money. And that's what a lot of those things are. And the tremendous thing about that is you don't have to cut anything or anybody in order to do that. Pam Dubois told me that our surplus for this year is up to about $4.7 million. That's on top of the almost $15 million surplus last year. There are funds that are available in our budget that if we would get just a little bit better budgeting. Now, listen, of course, we are going to have to make some expenditure reductions. I'm not saying that all of these things are, but I'm saying if we can actually do a little bit better job of purposing our money, then we won't have to go borrow that money, and that will save the county tens of millions of dollars.
And what I am saying is that regardless of how, okay, if we've allocated this $500 to fuel for the year and we only spend $250 of it, yes, that $250 is committed for that year. At the end of that year, that goes into, if we have that $250 left over, that goes into a surplus, the bottom line of our budget, which is where the funds are derived from that we allocated to schools just last month or whenever it was. So what is I still don't understand, you're not getting any more dollars to the bottom line of the budget. Now, the way that you explained it previously was the difference between the way we have been doing it and your plan is that you are prioritizing it at the beginning instead of the end. But it's the same dollars and it's the same money.
If you start the year and you know that you have those needs, I'm just going to stick with your example because we've been going with it. If you take $500 and allocate it to fuel when you only needed $250, and you have an expense that is that year, you've got to borrow the $250 before you know the $250 is available. And so what has happened is we have gone out and borrowed that money, and then paying for the schools has been paid for by borrowing instead of being paid for by cash. And what happens is you end up with surpluses, and then the surplus, up until the time that I got here, has been used on not funding schools. It's been used, even while I've been sitting on this board, we've talked about funding $3 million for a synthetic turf field. Currently, Camp Spencer's getting $1 million to build buildings out there. We just have a variety of projects that, because the money has not been allocated to the schools to start with, these really surplus projects, these one-time funds, we've been using them as projects that are interesting, but not projects that meet our actual needs. And so I would like to, right out of the gate, allocate that money to the schools so that we don't have to borrow the money. And then at the end of the day, we won't have to borrow any money at the end of the day.
And, and I think that as you and I have discussed some of these numbers before, the term that I have used is slice and dice the numbers, and we can do that from now till next month. I think you hit on the actual difference between your way of thinking and mine in what you just said. No, we have not allocated 100% of our resources to schools. We have allocated money to other purposes. You used the $3 million artificial turf field. That is not affected from our budget at all. That was an outside revenue.
Until we got paid back, it affected our budget.
Exactly.
We weren't going to get paid back for 10 years.
You're exactly right about that. My scope of what we should do as county commissioners is much broader than schools. Schools are extremely important. They make up a huge portion of our budget, and we have a lot of responsibilities there. We have other responsibilities as well. And so to reduce this implementing reductions, this is several contingencies, which means that if we do run afoul of our budgeted numbers during the year, and if we've got $500 allocated for fuel and we spend $700, then we've got to go somewhere and find that $200. So as I look at this slide, we are, let's see, we're there. I see contingency repeated up and down this page several times, which means that we are taking away any cushion that we have to meet those needs that might come up during the year. And then if we run into those situations, then we have to go to fund balance to fund those additional needs.
So
that is
not
a
true.
different philosophy of operating.
That's completely untrue. We did this year. We were able to take all of these out of the budget because we created that additional $5 million contingency that we've never had before. So with that $5 million contingency, that is not fund balance. That is an entirely separate $5 million. And because we created that $5 million contingency, then we could take these smaller contingencies out of our budget. And these are contingencies for which we budget for every year, so that money is allocated but is not spent. And so when it comes to borrowing money, that's money that can fund schools as opposed to borrowing money.
You'll have a one-year surge in that amount, but then that will end.
That's why I went through and did a 3-year analysis of our budget so that I can look and see what were the budget expenditures over the last 3 years to find out if we were dipping into those contingencies. And we were generally not dipping into those contingencies. So
Right.
when you fund that money there, that $5 million, if you don't usually dip into these contingencies, you won't ever have to replace it. Now, at some point we may have to replace it, but on a regular basis, we're not going to have to replace it. And I would say, to your point, my point is not that we should not ever build parks or not ever build new amenities. We should. But right now, we are $500 million in debt, and we need several new schools. So under my Plan C that Pam has prepared, for 2 years, we allocate this money to the schools, and we don't have any surplus, any planned surplus. But in year 2017, without a tax increase, we have a $4 million surplus. In year 2018, we have a $6.7 million surplus. In year 2019, we have a $9 million surplus. I have not taken those surpluses and allocated them to the schools. That is money that one day potentially somebody might allocate to the schools, but that is money that we could go back and do a lot of the projects that, as a community, we could do if we were not $500 million in debt.
Well, and I think the most important thing that we need to talk about our debt is why do we have this debt? How did we accumulate that debt, and why did we choose? Why did we think, it's not we, it's the people that came before me, but why did they think that was a wise thing to do? And it was because they built 22 schools since 1992, and that's where that debt came from. And that debt is being consistently repaid. Now we're in a situation where we need 3 or 4 schools instead of 20-some schools. So, yeah, as I maintain what I said originally, I do not know enough about the impact on the other services to the county to support this plan at this time. Now, perhaps I will learn something in the future that might change my mind, but based on the information I have right now, that would be my position.
Chairman Poole, may I speak?
Well, I have one more comment about that specific. The reason that we have that debt is not because of 20 years of building schools. We had a tremendous spike in our debt in 2007. Probably 50% of the debt that we have right now is, probably 40% is related to debt after 2007. And if you look at the structures that we built with that debt, being the jail, being the Health Alliance building, being some of the schools that we've talked about, those structures have been built to a standard which I think is too elegant or glamorous of a standard. And had we not built to that standard, we would not have the debt that we have.
Okay, since my name's been used several times, I'm going to speak for myself. And I have worked with Mr. Osterreich through this plan, and we have sat down together. We have gone through line items. We have done that on 3 or 4 different occasions. The first sheet of paper that he has presented to you with $5.2 million, some of those items were actually pointed out in the meetings that we had with each other, and they were also items that have already been taken into consideration when the 5-year plan was put into place. Some of the numbers on that plan are tied to fund balance and will not actually reduce the budget as far as being an additional expenditure, and we had those conversations about how some of those items would not work. I will gladly go through that and list exactly and tie off to each one of those items and provide that to all the board members. And for the $4 million list, I think we got, and Ann might be able to help me, I think we got halfway through that, and budget season started on what we can and cannot do at this point until the department heads actually turn their budgets in. And as soon as they do turn their budgets in, we would be able to answer that question. So yes, some cuts have been turned in. Not necessarily all of them will be able to be made to go towards the cuts that you're looking for, but it doesn't mean that there's not another option to look through. But I want to point out that staff has looked through those things. I know one of the items on that $5 million sheet was the $1.5 million for the land for the elementary school, which was funded by the excess 4 months of DMV overlap we had, and that revenue will go away next year and that expenditure will go away. The 3 contingencies on there, they have been removed. They are part of our 5-year plan. The reduction in debt service of $1,033,000-ish has already been taken into the 5-year plan. So there are some things that are on that list that are not going to work, but so we do not have $9 million at this point in time, but we need to find out where we're at. And I will be more than happy to go through that list and provide that information to all the commissioners so that we can move forward from that point. And if you have any additional questions, Jason, I'll be glad to sit down with you and go through them.
When we made that list, though, those things were not accounted for in the 5-year plan, right? Because they were new things that you and I talked about, and we would look at contingencies and you would say, oh, that's another contingency that we can include, because those were not included. The 5-year plan had not been
right, but
updated with that stuff. So,
but those were things that we would do as a staff on a regular basis. So I don't want to disagree with you, but that is the practice that we take. We do it every single year. So I was pointing to you when we went through those line items of this won't be here next year because we'll take this out because we did the $5 million. This won't be here because we set aside the $5 million. So.
But when I did the presentation in December, our 5-year plan did not have those expenditure reductions in them, correct?
Did we do one in the fall retreat? I can't remember whether we had a 5-year plan at that point.
We did our work after the fall retreat, Pam, you and I, so.
The various plans of which we did A, B, C, and D was at the January 24th retreat.
Yep.
And those numbers were considered in the balances that were running through those plans.
But that was after the presentation that I made. I mean, that was January, and my presentation was in December. So, I mean, I wasn't misleading people. It was just we updated it after I did my presentation.
Absolutely not saying you're misleading. I'm saying that the things that you and I talked about are some of the things that staff do on a regular basis. So to say that $300,000 on there can be cut, it already has.
Yep.
And that's all I'm just trying to clear up. I'm not taking sides. I just want to clear up that that's the process that staff normally takes. So we will be glad to go down that list and identify each and every item and talk about those as a group and see where we need to go forward from there.
But from a big picture perspective, our total budget went from 211 to $226 million this year, correct?
I wish I could tell you off the top of my head, but I can't.
Well,
but I'm sure it's documented somewhere.
And so if we simply roll back less than 50% of our budget increase, then we would fund this entire plan. And I think that's the thing that, from a big picture perspective, we should think about. Just cut less than 50% of our increase from this year, and we could save the county tens of millions of dollars. That sounds pretty exciting to me.
Chris, do you have any comments? Okay, that's because you hadn't weighed in yet. I want to make sure. Okay. Do you have anything?
No, I don't. Just that, again, the 5-year plan, the only year in the plan that is concrete is year 1. And the ones that were presented at the retreat were last year's 5-year plan, waiting on direction from this board so that we can continue on and start plugging numbers in. We have already started that process. We have not even met with our department heads yet, only on their logic models or their performance standards. They start bringing 2-3 weeks from now is when we start?
We start Monday.
Okay, next, it's flying by now. But next week is when we start seeing numbers from our board, or from our department heads. So that's when we as a staff start understanding what's coming through, and then we'll start making some adjustments. And then as we go, plan A, B, C, or excuse me, Mr. Osterreich's C, he's already worked on, but A, B, and D will change, especially D, because D is a hybrid of A, B, and C, and just another option to look at. But they're all plans, and they're not reality until we get good numbers from our departments. And if we get those good numbers and we go through them and vet them out, and then we bring them to you, and then you look at them and you vet it even more if you see fit. But we're still premature in the process. And I mean, I keep hearing, Commissioner, you say, where's the plan, where's the plan? Well, the plan is evolving. It has started in November, and it evolves every year from November to May, and in May is when the board gets the plan. You had there was 4 plans presented at 4 preliminary plans at the retreat. So there was 4 plans there. You've continued to modify yours. Staff has continued to modify D. And A and B are just status quo. They were, and that's what they were presented to you at the board that way. So I do take, to say that we haven't created a plan, I don't think is fair. We have. Our process is from November to May. It's not bringing you a plan as fast as you like, but the rest of the board, that's what they're used to, is from November to May is the process. And if the board tells us to speed that process up, we can. But we have not gotten any direction from the board to do that. So we are continuing on in the same process that we've always done. And in the end, if the numbers are not agreeable to you guys, then that's perfect. It's it's your budget. We're preparing it for you. So at the time, if there's something in there that looks excessive or that we don't want to do, then I think that's a good time to make those cuts. If you want us to expedite the process, give us direction and we'll do that. So to say that we don't have a plan, I don't agree with that. I respectfully don't agree with that. And so, again, staff is working very hard, but staff continues to hear that we don't have a plan or we're not doing anything. We are doing it just like we do every year. And again, that's the process that this board and previous boards have enjoyed for several years, and that's been what they expect. If this board expects something different, please tell us, and we'll present it to you in January. But I can guarantee you, if we present you a budget in January, the numbers are not going to be very good because it's a pure guess, because we've only had 6 months of actual spending for the year. So the farther we go out, the better the numbers are. And I get a little frustrated because I keep hearing, and I can guarantee you our staff gets a little frustrated too, that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we are. So maybe I said too much, but I wanted to get that out there. We are working the process. And
Mike, my statement has never been that we don't have a plan to do the budget. Of course we have a plan to do the budget, and you all have been tremendous at accomplishing getting the budget done. You've received several awards. What we don't have a plan for is capital expenditures to fund the schools. We have no plan for that other than to go borrow all of the money. And as I read to you what the school board had said, this first bond is the tip of the iceberg. Carolyn Carpenter said that. Blake Kiger said that. Jeff Phillips said that. They all said this is just the beginning of these numbers. So what I have asked for over the last 6 and 7 months, as we have continually talked about this bond and how we were going to fund the school needs, is what is the county's long-term plan for funding these needs? And there is still not one. I have come up with a plan to provide $208 million over the next 10 years. And otherwise, we're sitting here tonight and there is not another plan. And what are we going to do on Monday? Start the process for borrowing this money. So we are going down the path of borrowing money without a plan for where this path leads, and I don't think that that is very responsible. So if staff thinks that I have been upset that they have been not appropriately working on the budget, that is completely incorrect, and I apologize if people think that I've been talking about the budget. I'm not. I'm talking about coming up with funding to meet the needs of the community from a capital perspective.
Just a short response. I mean, we need to move on. But again, the 5-year plan, the discussion or the board, this board said 4 to 5 years ago that we're not building anything for 5 years. Well, 5 years is fiscal 17, 16. So what we did in the plan last year was we were seeing an excess of over, excess is a negative word, but a number over revenues over expenses. So how much money, if you chose to go and borrow money, if you chose to, this board has not said we were doing any of that, and neither has staff, but if you chose to, here's how much money you could absorb, and we could afford to pay debt service on within that current budget, and that's where we're at. So I just want to make sure that from our perspective, the 5-year plan is a plan. It is a plan. And the only definite year is the current year. Who knows what's going to happen in year 2, year 3, year 4. Year 4 and year 5 are purely best guesstimates. But that's all we can do to give you guys enough information so you can start seeing stuff coming down the pike and you're not surprised the next year when we're trying to budget. So maybe we're saying the same thing, but again, that 5-year plan is a plan, and it's just like the capital improvement plan. It's 5 years out. It starts trickling down through, so if you see a big expenditure coming through, you know it's coming through. If you don't like that expenditure, then we can take it off in year 2, 3, or 4, or we can keep pushing it out, in which we do quite often is push these things out at the staff level and say, we're not quite ready, we don't have enough money. So I think there's going to be more discussions, but I just felt that I needed to say that we do have a plan, or we're working the budget just as we always have. Now, in year 17, when the bond was proposed, there's cash in there. There's a lot of cash in there. Could it be used for debt service? Yes, it can. That debt service will allow you to give you some more purchasing power. If you don't choose to do that as a board, that's perfectly okay with us as staff. But I just, sorry, just a little frustrated that we constantly talk that there's no plan, and there is a plan that we're working on, and it happens every year, and it goes out 4 more years so you can see things coming through. Anytime that this board, or the majority of this board, feels it necessary to change that 5 years, even 2 years, 3 years out, tell us, and we do that. But when we are going to do that, we're going to give you all the opportunities to see what those impacts are. Okay, if I'm going to cut here, we want to make sure you understand the true impact of what those cuts are. And if you're in the end and you're okay with those cuts, then we make them. If you're not, then we'll show you an alternative that maybe you can achieve what you want to do, but you need to do it this way. So I'll shut up. Sorry.
Okay, the one thing that we said last week, and the reason we had the meeting tonight, is that there is a conversation to be had on the 27th. We have our regular meeting on Monday. Larry, correct me if I did not hear you correctly, but earlier you said that you were not ready to vote on anything or make any proposal tonight. Is that what I heard you say? Can you turn your mic on? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Until staff looks at all these figures and everything, I'm not ready to vote on it. I think it'd be unfair to them for me to do it.
I thought that's what you said. I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. So with that, we meet Monday. Is it fair to ask every commissioner between now and Monday to look at the information that staff has given us, and whether it's bond or cash, come prepared Monday for a discussion on, we have to give staff some kind of a guidance. I mean, and not just us. We said on the 27th that Rowan, Cabarrus, Kannapolis City Schools, and Cabarrus County Schools have to be in agreement. So we have to give them an opportunity to have a discussion with their board. I don't know if they have a board meeting between now and then, so, and I don't know if they would be willing to call a special board meeting. I have no idea. So would that, if I can just get a nod of a head or something, do you think that that is appropriate? You've given us one, and I don't know if you're going to change this one or if you're going to leave it like it is, which is your complete discretion. But Larry, would you be able to Monday give us, I presume staff can get you the feedback that you need, but do you think you would be able Monday to talk about it?
Will that give staff enough time to work through all these figures?
I hope so. I mean, we need to give them some kind of guidance. I don't think that they need to know something before the 27th, right?
That's correct. I think we can sit down with Commissioner Osterreich and we can look at his staff and we can look at modifying or offering another suggestion. Again, it's another suggestion for you to consider. And then I think we can get most of that together by Monday evening, you think? Or get it not just by Monday. Well, today is Wednesday, so we would need to get it to you guys in time to be able to review it. I don't want to just throw it on you at a meeting. So
what I did is I looked at the requests from the 3 entities and made a personal judgment on which items that I thought should go forward in some way, shape, or form. And so it's whatever you need. But I'd like to see that if all of you feel like you're going to be at a position Monday that we can have a conversation and try to be able to give some staff some direction, and then we don't call another meeting for us to. We've talked about it for a long time. I'm just trying to see if we can move us forward.
That's to make a decision on which projects we're going to fund, correct?
If there is a bond referendum, which has been requested, which projects would go on the bond referendum? Yes, sir.
Which we don't have no choice but put on there anyway.
That's what council has said, that there would be a bond referendum. We do have a choice of what would be on a bond referendum.
Right. I don't have no problem with deciding what funds, what projects to put on there.
Steve, do you think you would be prepared Monday to have a discussion and have projects that you think?
Yes, yeah, I agree with Larry. You know, I do want some input from staff. I think they've given us direction at numerous times in the past as to what we can handle as far as the bond payments within our current tax rate, so that we don't run any risk of having to increase our tax rate. But I would like to have that updated information in hand as I consider the projects.
Chris, do you think you'll be at a position on Monday to provide some thought and guidance?
Yes, I think we should vote on Monday.
Okay. I didn't even say vote. I don't know if it's a vote or if
Well,
it's a consensus, but we'll double check with
Right.
our attorney and make
However
sure.
it is, I think
how
a
that would be.
decision should be made on Monday.
Okay, I just want to make sure if you felt comfortable with that. Jason, do you feel comfortable on Monday being able to?
I would feel comfortable with this caveat. I heard from staff yesterday that there is a plan out that will take the money from Mount Pleasant and use it to meet school needs. And I want to know about that plan. Nobody has told me about that potential. Other commissioners have discussed it. Nobody has told me about that plan. And if that's a plan that we are going to be discussing on Monday, I would like to know about it now, so that in thinking about what items would go on the bond, that I am fully aware that is a potential. Is that a potential?
Are you asking me if that's a potential? Or is that just a generalized question?
Just a generalized question, Chairman.
Because I was going to say, I haven't had that discussion
Sure.
about, what I did is looked at projects that I thought, based on their request,
Yeah. Well,
if there were no other funding, should go there. But I have said before, and I will say again, and I think we have all said, pick whatever number. If this is the number for a bond, and we can not issue all those bonds, and we can do something less, that is 100% what I would want to do. I do have a concern that there, and I think it was said earlier, there is this one chance, and it may fail, which means there's a whole different kettle of worms that we'd have to consider, obviously, but I'm going to be optimistic that we can fund the projects and that we can address the school needs. And anyway, I would rather be a little high, if you will, in the total amount, and us come under it and not issue all those bonds, than, as you said earlier, until they get some hard numbers, we are really, their numbers, your numbers, my numbers are our best guesstimates, and they're really not hard and fast. And so I would just hate for us to have a problem.
Yeah,
So that's all.
I understand
that's
all
what
of
I'm
that.
saying, so.
If $13.5 million is going to be taken from Mount Pleasant, then that changes the equation for me and how I think about different funding and different projects in terms of priorities. So I would like to know that tonight, that is an option, and that's why I'm specifically asking that question.
Well, I don't know where the 13.5 been taken away from Mount Pleasant come from. I know I did say that when I found out that the 1.5 million for RCC was in that 13.5, I said I would be willing to take their money out and give it to them because they were promised that. Now, if that's what we need to do, we can also put 1.5 back in it from somewhere else later on. They're not going to build a school next week no way, so what difference does it make?
All I want to know is if we're going to be presented with a plan whereby the money from Mount Pleasant is taken and used for other projects, I want to know about it. That's all that I'm saying. I've heard from staff that there's a plan out there like that. I have not seen it. I have not heard from Mike. I heard it from Pam yesterday that is one option that you are working on. I want to know about it.
There is a plan that uses cash on the front end with a bond or with borrowing, whether it's commercial papers, whether it's a bond and it's 20 years, 5 years, 15. We're exploring all of those different years. And again, depending on whatever your payback period is going to adjust your interest rate. So yes, there is a plan. It's not taking any, if the Mount Pleasant School is on the bond or is going to be borrowed money for it, they're not losing the school, but there's using some cash up front. You've moved it
What
into
if
a
the bond
capital.
doesn't pass?
Then you don't spend it until you know if the bond passes or not. that's your security. And as long as you don't spend it, it's fine.
What would the money be used for?
I'll show you in the plan, but
Yeah.
what it is, well, we can talk more about the plan, and that plan is not a secret. The 4 commissioners that asked to come in and talk about the budget, they are aware of this plan.
So they asked to come in and talk about this?
They did, sure. They asked to come in and talk, I don't know which ones that didn't.
Well, Mike, I will say this, and I'm going to say it to you
Yeah, it's
right
fine.
here so everybody can. Chairman Poole got angry with me earlier because I have asked for a different standard of accountability. And what I have found from your office is that I do not get the information that everybody else gets. And we have found from your office that they are putting out information that's not correct about us. And, I'm sorry, not your office, from your staff. And I think that the fact that we're sitting here and potentially going to vote on something in 5 days, and this was our meeting at which we were going to discuss things, and it's not ready for me to see, but everybody else has at least heard of it, gives some indication as to potentially why I might think that some additional accountability might be needed.
Well, we can talk about this now, or we can talk about it later. I'm okay to
I
respond.
I have not seen any list saying exactly where funds would go to. I think Commissioner Burridge mentioned to me about possibly taking care of cosmetology.
That's the only
But I
thing
haven't sat
thought.
down and looked at it. And, I mean, we've had presentations when we had our work sessions, and I haven't sat down and had anything new presented to me, so.
I think page.
I really can't address that. And I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset with you. I'm not questioning the fact that you presented the numbers. We have to work as a group. That's my concern. I come into these meetings and I'm very stressed before I get here. And y'all might all be great and happy and not worry. It worries me a lot. And we've all got to be able to work together, and we've got to be able to come to a solution. And that's all I'm asking, is that Monday night for this one issue, we all come together, we all come prepared, and we'll see where it goes. I don't know where it's going to go, but we'll see where it goes, and we'll go there. I appreciate the hard work that staff has done. I appreciate the hard work that you've done, Jason, and everybody else. That I think we're all trying to get to a solution, and we're just trying to figure out how we can all get there together so that we can move on, and we need to move on. Chris, I'm sorry, you wanted to say something? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's going back to earlier comments discussing taking the $13.5 million from Mount Pleasant to use for cash needs. I think page 22 proves that. That was presented. I'm not sure how the school system came up with the $7.9 million as part of cash funds with the bonds. They said that was a directive,
I can tell you, I talked to the community college, I talked to Kannapolis City School, and I talked to Cabarrus County Schools and asked them what's up front that could be done that could be used for cash, and what's on the backside that can be used for cash. And the reason I asked for that is to make the bond as small as possible.
right.
Unless you want to go with the full 107,
No.
then we as staff think it's our duty to make these requests so that we
Right.
can look at these.
But right, and I understand that. But this cash, for instance, the school system, the Cabarrus County School Systems list, page 22, as I said, it incorporates the cash with the bond. Now that cash is coming from the $13.5 million that we had allocated for Mount Pleasant Middle School.
Commissioner Meismer, that cash it follows our standard practice. What we did, you asked for details on these projects, and they've given us details. We'll look at those projects and their detailed expenditures, and some of those things are not going to be something you want to borrow money for.
I understand.
So we will identify, and that's where the cash comes from. It actually backs out of a detailed look at the project. So if you have a school and it totals 15 million, but we look at it and there's categories that are 2 million of that are categories that we would not borrow money for because they're short-term expenditures we would pay cash for. We back into those numbers. That's following instruction that we've been given in the past.
And I completely understand that.
And
Okay.
nothing will happen to that cash, any cash, unless there's an action of this board. So this is a suggestion, but I would presume that that number does not correlate specifically to any other number. It was their attempt to look at what had been done in the past. And that, I think that's it. I really don't think there's anything else to it.
That is the
I
point.
remember a conversation of literally mops and brooms and buckets that should never be financed. And so, and I remember being on the school board and having a conversation of, we don't want to do that anymore. We have to pull these things out. And
Right. And
honestly,
I think
I mean,
we
I
all
didn't
agree.
produce this, but I think that that's all this is, was an attempt to identify some things that could be paid for with cash if we proceeded in that direction, and that's it. I really don't think there's any more to it. I've not said to move money out of that pot. That's where it is. Unless this whole board comes together and says we're going to move something, staff isn't going to touch it. And I just think that's honest. So,
I think that's the point, though, that Chris is making, is this board already came together and voted 4-1 that we were going to fund the school with that money. And so the idea that the school board thinks that they're going to get some of that money and that our county manager has a plan by which we spend that money that we still have not seen, I think is in direct contradiction to the fact that this board already did vote 4-1 as to what to do with that money. And I think that's problematic, that we have voted on this less than a month ago, and our staff is working on doing something that goes against our vote that we already took. Now, unless they have some indication from commissioners that they are going to go back on their vote with respect to that 4-1 vote, if you have indication from commissioners that they will do that, please let me know. But otherwise, the plan that you're working on goes directly against a vote we just did a month ago.
and in the interest of time, if we can move forward, again, I honestly do not believe that there is any intent behind this. I think this is a way of providing us money, money was the wrong term, providing us information. And what staff tends to do is, which until we tell them otherwise, they're going to do the same procedures they've done in past years. And I think that's all this is. So if there's no other conversations, or comments, we do have need for a closed session tonight, which should not last very long. I don't know what very long means anymore. So is there anything else that needs to be said at this point? Okay, if not, I would happily, I would happily accept a motion for the board to convene in closed session to discuss a personnel matter as authorized by North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A6. And we would like to invite into the meeting, who are we inviting anybody in?
In the first part would be okay.
Pam Dubois.
Pam and Lundy.
And Lundy.
Lundy Covington.
Covington, right, there you are, sorry, and Lundy. Okay? So do I have such a motion to go in closed session? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all very much for coming tonight. We do appreciate you being here.